Wysteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and to the collection by Drac Von Stollor. This story is called Medusa Rises from the Dead. Karen had this idea that she would invite some of her friends over. Spend the night at the old forgotten desecrated cemetery in the woods a mile down the country road from her house. The cemetery dates back to the 1700s, with many of the tombstones broken, and a sacrificial altar with bloodstains on it, where many unwilling participants took their last breath. Karen had no idea something evil was left behind at the cemetery. It had been lying dormant for centuries. Karen phoned her friends, Pam and Kathy, to invite them over for a fun night at the graveyard for telling some ghost stories around a fire with lots of drinking. The girls thought it was a cool idea Karen came up with, especially the drinking part. Karen picked out the night, so the forecast would be just right to set the mood for a spooky night at the graveyard. The night finally arrived and it was midnight. The girls piled into Karen's car with the music pounding. Karen said, "Anyone ready for a beer?" And they all said, "Hell yeah." They gulped down their beers as the cold wind blew against their faces. Pam said, "I think I see the cemetery up ahead." The wind was picking up and thunder rolled in. The lightning lit up the sky. The girls were getting pretty drunk but didn't care about the thunder and lightning. All they thought about was actually getting drunk. And, of course, telling ghost stories around the fire. Karen parked outside the cemetery. The girls grabbed a case of beer out of the trunk, opened the rusty gate, then entered with excited faces, making their way to the altar to set up a camp for the night. Kathy said, "Man, this place is creepy." Pam chimed in and said, "Look, girls, this must be the altar. It still has bloodstains on it. Those poor people must have suffered greatly. And thinking about it sends shivers up and down my spine." "We barely made it inside the cemetery. You're already scared," laughed Karen. "No, I'm not," replied Pam. Kathy came up behind Pam and said, "Boo." Pam just about jumped out of her pants and screamed. Kathy laughed and said, "Be quiet. You might wake the dead." "Ha ha, real funny," replied Pam. "Settle down, you two. Let's gather some firewood and get this party started," exclaimed Karen. The girls forgot to bring a tent, but were smart enough to bring the sleeping bags along. As the fire was blazing and the girls were drinking their beer and telling ghost stories in a drunken state of mind, Kathy said, "Look, beside the altar. It looks like a book." Kathy got up to get a closer look. Sure enough, her hunch was right. Kathy picked up the book and brought it back to the fire, dusted off the dirt in case there was any writing on the cover. Kathy tried to make out the writing on the cover, but all she could see was the Book of the Dead. She laughed and decided to open the book, see if there was anything worth reading. Pam and Karen were giggling and talking about some boy. Then all of a sudden Kathy said, "Oh, wait a minute. Listen to what it says. It says how to bring back someone from the dead. I know just the person. Remember the story you told me about Medusa, who could turn people into stone, Karen?" "Yeah," replied Karen. "Let's see if we can bring her back," said Kathy. "Medusa? Why her?" asked Pam. "I don't know. Maybe because everyone either asks for Bloody Mary or a dead relative, etc. But I've never heard of bringing Medusa back from the dead," said Kathy in excitement. Karen chimed in and said, "Go ahead." "Kathy, bring her back from the dead," laughed Karen. Kathy said the magic words, but after 5 minutes, no Medusa. She threw the book at the altar and downed a few more beers with her friends and said, "I think you guys are right about laughing at the idea of bringing someone back from the dead. Once they're a stiff, always a stiff. Let's tell a few more ghost stories while we're roasting marshmallows over this fire before we're too drunk to tell any more," said Pam. Then a few minutes later, Karen passed out drunk. Pam and Kathy said, "It doesn't take much for Karen to get drunk." Then fog was coming in from behind the altar. Pam asked Kathy, "Where's this smoke rising behind the altar?" "It's just smoke from the fire, stupid," laughed Kathy. "No, it's more than just smoke. Something's glowing in the smoke," explained Pam, her voice getting nervous. "Go check it out. Or are you too scared?" said Kathy. "Yeah, I'm too scared," replied Pam. "Stay here, chicken. I'll check it out." Kathy staggered over to the altar with a beer in her hand and said, Come out, wherever you are." "See, there's nothing," said Kathy, as she gulped down her beer and tossed her empty beer can at the smoke. Kathy turned to go back to the fire. Then all of a sudden the smoke cleared, and Medusa's head appeared and said, "Who has summoned me from the dead?" Kathy screamed, but it was too late to run for cover. She made the mistake of gazing upon Medusa's face and turned to stone. Pam shook Karen as she was screaming, but Karen was passed out for good. Pam ran to the car to escape Medusa, but Medusa wasn't about to let her escape. Pam was able to make it inside the vehicle, but Medusa's head appeared in the front passenger seat of the car. Pam screamed and screamed again, trying to get the keys in the ignition, but she was shaking too violently, and the keys hit the floorboard. Medusa said, "Look at me." Pam screamed, "No!" Medusa's power was too strong for Pam to ignore. She closed her eyes tight and prayed for Medusa to spare her life. But her eyes opened wide, and she screamed. Then she turned to stone. Medusa's head floated back inside the cemetery, and made its way back to the fire where Karen was passed out. Karen finally awoke from her drunken state, and as her eyes opened, Medusa's head was inches from her face. Medusa said, "The dead isn't always dead as you think they are." Medusa laughed. Karen didn't have time to react and escape the hell that was unleashed, so she turned to stone just like her two friends did. A lesson to be learned. If you open the Book of the Dead and you think it's all a joke, think again. This book is serious as a heart attack and should be left alone, unless, of course, you're not afraid of the dead. The end. And that is the next story by Drac Von Stollor. Please hit the like, share if you can, and if you've not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. Many blessings. Wysteria. Energy. Twister.